I want to broaden our conversation now and bring in Congressman Rick Crawford, an Army veteran from a military family now representing Arkansas's 1st District. He's also chair of the House Intelligence Committee, making him a member of the so-called Gang of Eight. That's a group of congressional leaders brought in on high-level classified briefings from the executive branch. Representative Crawford, thank you again for joining us. Because you are a member of the Gang of Eight, you are one of the few Americans who had advance notice of this strike this morning. What can you tell us about why now, why the timing was right, and what the goals are?
Well, I think there are 3 goals to be addressed here. We've heard a lot of analysts talk about it. One is the nuclear capability that they continue to engage in. The other is their ballistic missile production and deployment. And the third one was the regime change piece that is we're seeing, these organic uprisings in Iran. And we're seeing the regime had killed upwards of 30,000 of their own people as a result. So there were some compelling reasons here, but I would argue that, the notion of starting a war with Iran, I don't think that people realize we've been at war with Iran since 1979. So President Trump is not starting a war, he's finishing one.
One of the questions Democrats have raised is whether the president should have gone to Congress for approval. Now, Congress, of course, hasn't declared war formally since World War II. But there is the question of whether this is really a preemptive strike or merely a preventative one. Was there an imminent threat from Iran?
I'm not sure that there's much of a difference between a preventive or a preemptive strike in this context. I think what we're seeing here was there was a sufficient threat and a 47-year history that we had reached a point at which we are not going to take anymore. And I think President Trump recognized that this was an opportunity that the timing was perfect and it was surgically precise. And the conditions on the ground are such that the Iranian people needed assistance so they can affect their own self-determination and really take matters into their own hands. Now, regime change is a byproduct of that. I welcome it, quite frankly. And if you've seen the footage from around the world, not only in Iran, but in the diaspora communities here in the United States and elsewhere in the world, they welcome that change as well.
What's next, Congressman, to the best of our knowledge?
Well, you had some really good analysis in the previous segment with the Admiral and Elliot Ackerman. I think laid out a pretty extensive analysis of what we can expect. You'll continue to see airstrikes, and it'll be very precise, targeting areas of things like the southern portion, what they call the southern ballistic missile belt there in the southern region of Iran, the production so that we can pretty much curtail their magazine depth. It's going to take a little bit of patience because most of those ballistic missile sites are mobile. So it will take a little bit of time, but the president has indicated that. But what we see are the conditions on the ground are ripe for organic regime change. And, we pray for the Iranian people to be able to organize and engage in self-determination.
Congressman, it's been pointed out that this is the largest buildup of U.S. forces in the Middle East since the start of the Iraq War in 2003. For many Americans, they wake up today and they wonder, is this a here we go again moment? To those people, including, I'm sure, some of your own voters and voters for President Trump, what do you say to calm the nerves?
Well, I think we have to take a look back at the history here with this particular country. And myself, I actually was part of an engagement that involved Iran back in the 80s. And then there was, since 1983, the attack on the Marine barracks in Lebanon. And, of course, go back to 1979, when they took American hostages from the embassy in Tehran. There's just a laundry list of abuses of the United States and our allies and the engagement and funding of terrorism for 47 years. And this is, I would liken this moment in history to almost equal to bringing down the Berlin Wall. The job's not finished yet, but that is the historic arc that we're seeing play out in front of us here, in that we're doing something that is actually beneficial to the entire world, particularly the Gulf region there. And I think that our allies recognize that. I think Iran made some really strategic mistakes by attacking their neighbors in the region, unprovoked attacks against Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, that was not a good move, and it basically cemented the relationship with the United States.
Congressman, this is not the first time that President Trump has used military action against Iran while technically talks, diplomacy was still afoot. Other times he has done so as well. And it raises the question, I heard it posed today, I'll pose it to you. Is America now a country where instead of the military being a last resort, the military is more like a first resort?
I think the president has engaged in an earnest diplomatic outreach to Iran when other countries didn't, and when other regimes didn't. For example, the Obama administration didn't engage directly with Iran. This was, the JCPOA was engaged, through intermediaries, and we saw the result of that. This is the president doing what he said he would do. He wants to make peace, and in fact, we've seen him make peace with other engagements around the world. This is no different. He makes the offer to go to the table with the Iranians, and you and I weren't in the room, but what I did hear from folks who were in the room was a complete level of belligerence and arrogance that they absolutely refused to even consider those three key points that we've made tonight with regard to what those negotiations would entail. So that's an intractable position. And, all the goodwill in the world on the part of Donald Trump may not have been enough. They simply were not serious about engaging in a diplomatic solution.
All right. Congressman Rick Crawford of Arkansas's 1st District, thank you very much, Congressman.
You bet. Thank you.